What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the second video of the day. And like I said before, this is going to be a longer video about exactly how and where and why we got to where we are in Afghanistan, and a little bit longer discussion of the current situation, what's going to happen from now. Uh, so many people are wondering why Afghanistan is suddenly collapsing, and I'm going to give you guys a brief outline of the reality of what happened. So around in 2014, Obama announced that US troops would withdraw from Afghanistan by 2016. This obviously didn't happen. Um, it took longer. Uh, Donald Trump was elected. Obama wasn't re-elected. It was one of those things where Obama wasn't around to see this through, right? It just didn't work out. There wasn't the support to do it. There wasn't the time to do it. There was just no way of doing this at this time. But in 2019, the US peace talks began. But that began at the end of 2018, to be honest. That was the start of it. Um, so the peace talks began, and this is where the US and NATO forces were kind of deciding when they were going to withdraw. They knew they were withdrawing, they knew this was going to happen, they knew what they were doing, and they were making a decision of when it would happen. So, you know, it was a massive decision. And basically, the decision was that there was no conflict agreement between the US and NATO forces and the Taliban, and that Taliban would not take over any provincial capitals, that they would not attack US convoys, troops, etc. That there would be basically a no conflict agreement until the US and other allied forces had fully withdrawn from Afghanistan. Now, that was basically the peace deal that happened, and that was the agreement. Now, what should have happened is that the US and allied troops from across the world trained more Afghan forces, special forces, security defense forces. Around 10,000 would have been a good starting point to supplement the loss of the forces that would be withdrawn from the nation. And this did not occur. What also should have happened is that weapons, ammunition should have been supplied, MREs stockpiled, so there would be enough of everything for the Afghan military to hold the state, and that did not occur either. And that's really the big one. There should have also been another agreement that Afghanistan could purchase military equipment from allied representatives, whether that be the United Kingdom or the USA or NATO or Germany, wherever the case might be, that they had the ability to purchase, escort vehicles, armored carriers, transport troops, transport vehicles, tanks, helicopters, drones, basically things they would need in order to adequately defend their nation to supplement what they had. Basically what we needed was a transition from Western forces doing the role to Afghan forces doing the role. And instead of having that over 3 years where there was this significant training and all these things could have been put in place to an extent where Afghanistan would not be in the position it's in, this wasn't done. So what this meant was that Afghanistan, by the time we get to now, 2021, even November 2020, the situation is that Afghanistan has not got any form of significant defense. They haven't got the stockpiles of weapons or ammunition or the training or the manpower in order to hold the nation. And the Taliban has known for also 3 years that this was going to happen. So in those 3 years, they've been recruiting, they've been stockpiling, They have been taking over borders, border posts. They have been taking over rural provinces that aren't capital provinces, which was what the US banned. They've been taking over areas that are unpopulated but have strategic value in terms of supply routes and launching stations and, just militarily, they are important positions. Now, this is what happened, and obviously Biden decides on a complete US withdrawal, which is what the Taliban was waiting for. That was what they were hoping for. That's what they were expecting. This within the timetable. This was around April 14th. It was a deadline for May the 1st, but that didn't happen. On May the 1st, it actually started where they started withdrawing troops. That is one of the things that happened. The 1st of May, US and NATO starts formally withdraw troops from Afghanistan. And this is where it begins. This is where the Taliban takes notice and goes, right, this is starting. They're starting to move people out. They're starting to withdraw. They're starting to come back from positions, not supporting the Afghan security forces in the positions that they were previously. There's a retreat, there's de escalation, there's a moving back. And then there's this opportunity for the Taliban to move forwards. And this is essentially what's happened. Now, there was nothing the Afghan people could do because they were choked off from supplies from the outside because of the border control. Whether it's money, food, weapons, armory, anything like that, fuel, aid, supplies, everything coming in around these borders that Taliban control, um, is not getting to the Afghan government, and it's going to the Taliban to supply and them. So it's a net negative for the Afghani people and the Afghan government, but it's also a net profit for the Taliban without them actually expending resources or losing anything from it. They have these positions that can't be taken back because the Afghan security forces, special forces can't deal with that situation. And so it creates this catch 22 where every single day Afghanistan is losing something, and every single day the Taliban's gaining something. So the gap widens and widens. Now, as I said before, US and NATO forces are to help because they have access to aircraft that can deliver all of these things. There are planes that can deliver vehicles, tanks, you name it, they can deliver it. I'm talking about the C-5s specifically that the US Air Force has, the world's most advanced carrier planes that have been used since Vietnam, and they can carry pretty much anything. Amazing loads that you would not believe that could have been used in order to actually supply the Afghan people, even though the borders are shut down, with the things that they need. But this wasn't done. There wasn't that agreement made. So we're in this position. So it moves on. As I've said, Taliban realized the US is starting to withdraw people, that NATO was starting to withdraw people. So what do? They wait. They wait. They wait for a significant amount of positions to be lost by the American and NATO forces, and for them to not be adequately defended by Afghan troops. They wait for a significant amount of troops to leave, vehicles, personnel, etc., for America and the NATO forces to not be checking checkpoints anymore so they can take them over. So now we're getting closer. Now we're getting further. So we get further, and where do we get to? We get to July 13th. And this is from the New York Post, and this is graphic video that shows Taliban executing unarmed Afghan special forces soldiers. I'm not going to show the video, obviously, for obvious reasons. As always, leave the links to everything in the description below. So if you want to watch them, you can watch them. But here's what happened. The Taliban executed nearly 24 unarmed members of the Afghan Special Forces, mowing down the soldiers in the town market after they surrendered when they ran out of ammunition, the shocking new video shows. And this is what I was talking about, that the Afghan forces did not have the means in order to defend themselves. They did not have the ammo, the weapons, or the reinforcements to do this. And the Taliban controlled the situation. they controlled this province, this town. Now, this was in Dalat Abad in the Faryab province near the Afghan border with Turkmenistan, and this was in June. You know, gunfire erupts and cries of Allah Akbar, God is great. But a witness of the slaughter said, the commandos were surrounded by Taliban. Then they brought them into the middle of the street. This was after they surrendered, and they executed them. They shot them all in the street. And this has been confirmed by the Red Cross. The Red Cross has confirmed that that 22 commando bodies were retrieved after the shootings. Um, and this is the first step. This is what happened. This was one of the first provinces um, that fell, one of the first areas where the Taliban really made a move. And this escalated. It started off small because at the start, the Afghan people did have, the Afghan military did have some weapons, some training, some personnel, and some supply to go around, but it wasn't enough. So, this is what the Taliban saw. Every time they attacked somewhere, it started more and more increasingly, it become clear that the supplies weren't there, that their strong arming their hold upon the border, their plan of desupplying the nation was working, and that it was really dire for these forces. So we move on, and we move on to around about 12th of August. This was, but it was a week ago that this started happening. So it'll be around the 3rd, 4th, 5th. That was the kind of days when stuff started happening increasingly. The Taliban claim Kandahar as onslaught continues. The armed group advanced rapidly across Afghanistan, seizing at least 11 provincial capitals in a week. Now, as I said at the start, it started off slow, and that was because there was resistance. Capitals were able to resist because they had some supply. But that quickly left, that quickly dwindled. They didn't have enough, they didn't have adequacy in order to mount a long term, you know, siege, to hold out, to have any form of means of, actually long term doing something about this. And that's the sad reality of it. So all these capitals fell in a week because once one fell, then that gave the Taliban a more strategic position to attack the next one, and then move on to the next one, then move on to the next one. And every time one falls, it's not just the effect of saying, "Oh well, they've got another one. You can hold the next one." It's demoralizing. It's demoralizing, and people know that in these situations where it is this capital that fell, there wasn't reinforcements. There wasn't supplies. They ran out. They couldn't hold. They were overrun. And when you have that adversity, what do you do? And that's kind of how it went and how we got to where we are now. It was a failure from the West in order of the withdrawal, the plan, the way it was done. The entire idea behind it was flawed. There was more that could have been done and should have been done in a way that was better, and that I can figure out in a day of how to do, they can figure out in 3 years. Now, don't forget, in 2014, Obama, Obama proposed this. So they had 7 years to sort this out. They had 4 years, 5 years nearly, where they could come up with a plan. Then they had another 3 years to implement the plan. And it didn't happen. And I'm sorry, but it's unacceptable upon any level. It's a sheer amount of absolute incompetence. And people are going to suffer. People have suffered. People have died. Journalists have been killed. Soldiers have been executed. And this is not the end. So, what do I predict for the future? Well, as I said before in my other video, the Taliban won't rule out stonings or public executions, in the return of Sharia law. It's back. Women will not have rights anymore. I think that was expected if the Taliban took control, and I expected the Taliban to gain control with everything that I saw was going on. I realized early on with the situation in the other province of Faryab that they didn't have the supplies, they just didn't have the personnel, they didn't have anything. At that point, I realized to myself, this situation's bad. This situation is not gonna have a happy outcome. And when I kept reading and looking, I realized that the move was coming, and unless someone intervened, that this result would happen. And what does this mean? This means that everything's gonna change in Afghanistan. Number one, it's no longer a democracy. Don't pretend it is. Don't think that it will be. It will not be. Um, it's a dictatorship. Do not mistake it for anything else other than it is, even if they want to call him a president. He is not a president. He was not duly elected, right? Don't believe that for a second. Sharia law is coming back. As long as in public executions have not been ruled out, they probably and will definitely return, in my opinion. Women will not be allowed out of the house without a male escort anymore. This already happened in provinces, capitals. This has been something that's happened. Also with that in mind, it it is horrible all around. Press, um, I expect that now the Taliban's in control. Once they get their people in key positions and they take over the relevant buildings, there will be a somewhat press blackout. We will probably not hear as much from Afghanistan as we normally do, and from those we hear about, they will be taking enormous risk. What we will hear will be a lot of propaganda, a lot of rhetoric. It will be a lot of dictatorship. I recommend for anyone who is interested in the subject to watch How to Be a Dictator on Netflix. It's sort of a history of occupations like this, and you will kind of get an insight into where this is heading and where this is going. But that will be a key thing: media, how it is portrayed, what goes out of the country, what comes into the country, and what the world knows. And there will be leaks and there will be stuff that comes out, but at the same time, there will be heavy control, there will be propaganda, there will be brainwashing, there will be um the Taliban will do everything in their power to try and keep people in line. And with that in mind, this comes back to what I said about the executions and stonings. This is a power play. This is a power play to make people afraid. People will go missing. People will be tortured. People will be killed. Things will happen. It will not be spoken about out loud, but there will be this understanding that if you don't play the game, if you don't play ball, if you flaunt the rules or try to, in some way, work against what is going on in Afghanistan, the Taliban, the leadership, the dictatorship will not tolerate it. This will happen. It will not be straight away, but it will happen within a few months, a year or so. It will come and it will happen and it will be horrible, and we may or may not find out about it. We will eventually probably find out about it, but by that time there will be a lot of suffering, and this is a crisis. And frankly, at this point, unless something is done within the next week, this week now, then this situation has the potential to run on for years, if not decades, and could really seriously undermine the region. And it is horrible and sad. I know this is a long video, and I appreciate every single person who stuck with me to the end so I got through this. I know it's different. It's not the normal thing I do, but I felt I had to give everything in this video to try and explain to you the vast amount of the situation, exactly how we got here, how a failure of leadership by the West resulted in this situation. Not just one country, but multiple countries failed in this situation and should have known better, as I know better in one day than they have in almost 7 years. If you want to see more of my content, please follow the channel, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below on your opinions in this entire situation upon all aspects of what I've talked about. I appreciate every single one of you for listening to the video, and please give your thoughts and prayers to the people of Afghanistan, your good vibes, whether you're religious or not, or whether you are atheist or not, or agnostic, whatever you believe in, whether it's karma, good fortune, good luck, good vibes, positivity, anything, please give that to the people of Afghanistan because they're going through a terrible ordeal that's only going to get worse. And us, citizens, normal people, there's little we can do. But maybe if we pressure the government enough, we speak out enough, then nations around the world will start acknowledging this and help us, formulate some sort of response to protect people from this tyranny going further. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later.